Good morning or good afternoon, depending on what class period you're in. Today we're going to talk about the growth of monarchies. Um, and what we remember about monarchies is that monarchies are ruled by a king or a queen. Um, Monarchies are a type of government. Kings and queens it's a family thing. So usually it's passed down from son to son, or father, or not son to son, but father to son or father to daughter. It just depends on the monarchy and the nation. Now, here's a map of medieval Europe, and hopefully you've either colored or you're planning to color this medieval Europe map. Okay, moving on. Now, England is going to be the first area to actually develop a strong central monarchy. And when we say central, we mean like they centralize or they consolidate all the power into one. Okay, and there's not a whole bunch of regional kings like when we talked about Charlemagne's empire. In England, there's one. Okay, they start to consolidate their power. So here's a map of England. What will happen is that the Anglo-Saxons they're descendants of the Angles and the Saxons who invaded in the 400s. They invaded England in that area. And England was divided into 7 smaller kingdoms, and they were all independent. But by the 800s, the Vikings had invaded the area and conquered several areas of England. But what's going to happen is Alfred the Great. Remember that people with the name Great don't get them for no reason. He was great and he kicked out the Vikings after they had invaded. And he drives the forces north to London and Danelaw, which is actually like Viking territory. And what will happen is that what you have to remember is that this monarchy will be established in Alfred the Great's lineage, or his descendants will rule for like 200 years. One Anglo-Saxon piece of literature is Beowulf. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, but I know you definitely read the book in English class. But Beowulf is one of the earliest works of Anglo-Saxon literature, and it's written in Old English. Also, the Normans. So a big thing that you need to add to your notes, and it's not on this paper, is that next to the word Normans, wherever you put it on your notes, you need to add the word or the time 1066. What is going to happen is that in 1066, a king is going to die without an heir. What happens when we don't have an heir? An heir to a throne, someone to take our place after we die in our monarchy. Well, usually, and it's just like with Rome, someone dies, there's a struggle for power. So what's going to happen is that you have a Harold who, during this time, is an Anglo-Saxon noble, and William is the Duke of Normandy, which is like located in France, and a distant relative of the king. So Harold's a noble, William's a distant relative, which means he's a little bit down on the family tree. He's not right next to the king that just died. They're going to fight for power. Harold becomes king when the English nobility supports him. So the English nobles are like, we like Harold. He's a noble like us. He can rule England and run the show. And William's like, you know what? I'm not feeling that. So what he decides to do is take the crown by force. Okay, so he kind of like kicks Harold's tail a little bit. He's like, "Yep, get off the chair. You're not king anymore. And I'm William the Conqueror, and I will be king." So all of England becomes his property, and what he decides to do is divide it into fiefs, which you've already learned what a fief is in our last lecture and yesterday in class. And he establishes new nobility. Well, you need to think about that. You know, the nobility was supporting Harold, and then William rolls up and is like, now I'm going to take over, okay? And so what he does is he changes the script a little bit, and he puts in place new nobility who support him. Remember, in leadership, you can't have if you're the leader, you can't have people right below you who don't support you. They got to be for you. So William realizes this and he's like, okay, you guys need to like step down, go on about your business, and I'm going to put some new people in your place. One awesome thing that William will do is that he's going to survey the population. And he puts this in the Domesday Book. The book is used to create a central tax system for England. Now, I want you to take a look at where it says surveys the population and puts it into a book. Is there anything similar that you know in American society that we use to survey the population? And I'll let you think about it for a second. And actually, you can write it down. Hopefully, your teacher will touch base with you on that. One other thing that is going to happen is that he will create a tax system. So everyone who lives in England or Normandy will be taxed. And another thing, he is going to introduce French culture to England because he's from France, but he takes over England. So this is an example of cultural diffusion, okay? There's a page of the Domesday Book right there. All right, the next thing we're going to discuss is the English in France. William's descendants inherit Normandy. Of course, remember this is a monarchy, so when the king dies, his son or whoever he leaves it to and his family take over and they inherit Normandy. Okay? So they inherit Normandy. Here's this area of Normandy. This is William the Conqueror's invasion route. So if you can see, he came from here, across the English Channel, boom, coast of England. Okay? And check out the sea monster. All right, moving on. So what happens is William's granddaughter marries a French duke. So later on, that's more consolidation of power because that French duke has property and land, and she inherits that as becoming his wife, and she has England. So remember, there's more and more of France and England being kind of under one leader. The next thing that's going to happen is that their son, Henry II, so he'll be William's great grandson. I know it's getting a little tricky, but just stay with me here. He's going to inherit more lands in France. Now, Henry marries this woman named Eleanor of Aquitaine, okay? She is powerful. She's a French duchess. She's got it going on, y'all. And she also rules like a large amount of land on France. So by the time Henry marries Eleanor, excuse a little pop up, my bad, y'all. He is now ruling half of France and all of England. Okay, she's ruling half of France and all of England. Okay, so remember that during this time, that kingdom is all of England, half of France is very large. And here's a map. So if you look, you can see these areas right here. It's England and English possessions under France, under Henry II from 1154 to 1189. Okay, if you look, Holy Roman Empire of Germany, France, boom. See Aquitaine right here from Eleanor, and then all of England here. Okay. Moving on. So the Magna Carta, not the Holy Grail. I thought you would find that funny. But back to what I was saying. The Magna Carta was drafted in 1215. What you need to understand. Let me see if it zooms back in. Very good. Nobles under King John wanted to limit the king's power. Okay, his power was continuing to grow, and ultimately he faced a rebellion. He had lost. By the time he gets to King John, he's lost the French holdings, raised money by taxing the nobility. And let me give you a little rundown on rich, well-educated people who are high in the hierarchy of society or higher up in society. They do not, during this time, like to be taxed. We will talk more about that nobility class being taxed in the French Revolution, but nobles don't like to be taxed because somebody can't get it together financially. So they want to rebel. And what will happen is that his nobles will force him to sign the Magna Carta. King John was also known as King John the Soft Sword, and I always find that very amusing because they were saying that he was a weak king. So what this document will do, oops, excuse me.